Hollywood, the dream factory whose glitz and glamour occupy millions of fantasies and fragments of realities worldwide. But what makes Hollywood Hollywood? Well, for the past 60 years, the trajectory of the entertainment industry has been heavily forged by one major asset, the action movie. Grossing billions yearly, the versatile genre has something for everyone. Whether you're into superheroes, horror, drama, or comedy, action has it covered. For decades, young boys have watched and idolized heroic, intelligent action stars, such as Superman, Indiana Jones, and the Terminator, shaping that tiresome, sexist ideology of the male savior complex. For young girls who've sought representation of those same traits, they too have idolized Superman, Indiana Jones, and the Terminator. Well, up until recently. You see, historic portrayals of women in action have classically lacked those key attributes we see in male stars. Their resilience, charisma, strength, and bravery are all substituted with a combination of physical and emotional traits that work to hypersexualize and belittle the intellect and abilities of women. As ideas shift around misogyny in the Western world, the portrayal of female action stars continues to evolve and introduce these characters as powerful and capable, rather than brainless eye candy. In this video essay, we explore the narrative that action movies are increasingly moving away from the sexualization to the heroization of female protagonists, through the ideas of the male gaze, female heroine archetypes, and the masculinity of heroism.
Laura Mulvey, British feminist film theorist, famously coined the term male gaze in visual pleasure narrative cinema in 1975. She drew on psychoanalysis and Freud's psychoanalytic theory of scopophilia to demonstrate the ways in which the unconscious of patriarchal society has structured film form. Mulvey believed in a world ruled by patriarchy and the centrality of male viewership. The pleasure in looking has been split between an active male and a passive female, thus creating the predominantly male gaze in cinema. In the context of action movies, female characters are typically aestheticized and portrayed as an object of desire and sexualization for the pleasure of the male audiences. Their reduction to the trope of femme fatale bears little to no distinction between the personalities of these heroines across the whole of action genre. The term femme fatale originated in the film noir, however is now widely used across a range of films in both the spy and action genre, posing women as a hypersexualized product of the male gaze. Black Widow is one of the classic heroines who fall victim to both the male gaze and femme fatale trope. Portrayed as an object of Tony Stark's desire in Iron Man 2, she has no shortage of skills in spycraft, such as software hacking, the use of handguns and widow bites, as well as incredible physical strength due to her background in martial arts. In the earlier movies, she's typically dressed in tight bodysuits or clothes that cling to her body, emphasizing her curvature and her chest, with exposed cleavage and a full face of makeup. This is especially evident in the interrogation scene in the original Avengers, where she's tied up to a chair, wearing a tight black dress with a low neck and sheer tights, surrounded by a group of older men. The low lighting in the room casts shadow on her exposed skin, emphasizing that the sequence served to portray her as a sexual object of desire for the male audiences. The men around her are not taking her seriously as a woman, stating the famous Black Widow, and she turns out to be another pretty face, which underlines the notion that the female heroine archetype does not actually exist to perform a heroic function in cinema. Lack of characterization of characters such as Black Widow plays a dual role to drive the plot, provides an accessory for their male counterparts in the film without undermining their authority and superior position in the dynamic, and also serves to please the predominantly male audiences watching action films. As stated by Mulvey, it is her lack that produces the phallus as a symbolic presence. Through these characters, Hollywood coded the erotic language of the dominant patriarchal code, creating female heroines for the pleasure of the male audiences, not for the diversifying element of the plot.
Although we as a society have moved on from the idea of simply portraying women as the damsel in distress, it almost seems as if we've simply evolved these characters by keeping them as eye candy, but with the extra additions of a gun, a knife, and a badass attitude. When I say this statement, I'm mainly focusing on earlier female protagonists, such as Elektra, Black Widow, and the Scarlet Witch. These characters were written into their earlier media solely as a heroic eye candy, with their only purpose being to throw around the bad guys or to simply play as the main love interest, all whilst looking like the epitome of society's idealistic body standard. In other words, these characters were written to be some sort of fantasy in the eyes of audiences, pretty much made to appear to do the impossible, and ultimately creating a disconnect as well as a sense of abnormality between these characters and their audiences. Since 2015, however, we've begun to see a much-needed change in the female hero. Instead of portraying these characters with the pathologized eye candy label, they've come to evolve into the heroes that female audiences have been craving all along. Or as Caroline Heldman wrote on the female hero, her hero status is believable because she is performing fantastic but not superhuman feats. A very drastic change has been within the costumes and movements of these characters, where any revealing cleavage or a hypersexualized fighting style has pretty much been completely abandoned, with most female heroines returning to the screen with the new and improved style. Despite first appearing in 1977 during Star Wars A New Hope, Princess Leia was actually a frontrunner for this new and improved stereotype of the female heroine. She easily surprised audiences by bashing down any concept of her being a damsel in distress, yelling orders at her male counterparts, and taking the lead during various situations, all whilst maintaining a connection with the audience and being portrayed as a strong, true female heroine.
The female heroine archetype creates emphasis on heroism. It highlights that women are no longer the underdog of the action genre, and it inspires more and more young female actresses to audition for roles in this genre with a lessened fear of failure. Challenging traditional expectations associated with female heroes in action movies is becoming more and more common within the 21st century. Female main characters over time have changed from sidekicks and love interests to being the protagonist of the story and the hero. With this, women are disrupting gender normality and creating a new standard for themselves in action movies. In almost all action movies, the female lead has always been named the heroine, someone who needs to be saved by the main character, the man in the movie. The revisioning of the hero archetype allows us to have a vision of a courageous female hero, displaying leadership and assertiveness, rather than just a mere romanticized heroine. In recent action movies, we see the main female character fighting and overcoming adversity, as well as using violence more, therefore blurring the line between masculinity and femininity. Katniss Everdeen, the female protagonist from The Hunger Games, demonstrates this very black and white. Action movies that are being produced now display women as something that are more than just women supporting a man's story. It can now be the women's story. In the 2000s, we saw the percentage of female protagonists overall increase from 12% to 16%. This is a great improvement from how it was in the 20th century, but more progress is needed. This is the type of thing that should be even without even having to question it or to fight for it.
In conclusion, women in action films are becoming seen as heroes and are no longer just supporting characters of romantic interest. In a shift from outdated views, we're witnessing female characters in important roles, carrying the story and showing independence. However, Laura Mulvey's idea of the male gaze remains even in situations in which women hold positions of power. The portrayal of female characters may at times seem aimed more towards a male audience than a true representation of female strength, and they tend to be sexualized. The female stars of today have challenged the idea of the underdog. They are the ones helping others, not the ones waiting to be saved. However, the way power is shown and our expectations of women on film continue to clash. Being a hero is still often shown by acts of violence, anger, and emotional repression, qualities that are usually associated with men. Female characters must maintain their emotional honesty and feminine traits, as well as to looking strong and capable, which gives the characters depth and ability to relate. Not all films are able to strike this perfect balance, often losing strength for depth, or the other way around. In years to come, images of female heroes that go beyond surface empowerment will be the most powerful. The future depends on deeper, more realistic representations, ones that let women be powerful, vulnerable, not perfect, fully human, rather than just switching the gender of stereotypically male action hero.